So this has a network connection. Does not have video output.
HDMI.
Look at that! It's hiding back there. Okay. So we could use this in the sanctuary.
We could use this anywhere.
No,
I'm thinking of putting it in a
cart. This is yeah.
I'm thinking we get its own cart. That's why I ended up getting this, because the more I looked at the options and the pricing, I was like, this may be more of what we want in one thing.
What did this cost?
$500?
That's not terrible.
No, I mean, the ones that are specialized for Zoom cost about $3,000.
Yep.
And they require you to get a Zoom Room license, which is $50 a month. So it's the gift that keeps on giving. So let's see. I mean, hey, come on in. Don't throw away the box. We'll see if it works.
We're doing it. This is in here today, right? Yeah.
We're testing out a new Zoom setup.
Okay.
So I got a new little, it's meant for conferences.
What is that?
It's called a sound bar. Or
we were talking about it last night on our reopening meeting.
You got it.
Yeah, I know that. I know that.
Okay, just need to mute, right?
No, I think you need to disconnect the audio.
Oh, because it's
The speaker and like.
yeah, I hear it. Okay.
Is everybody doing?
Oh, but I need to unmute because
For what?
I don't know.
Yeah, it's all in one. You're just doing that for screen
I
share.
understand.
That's the only reason why you need to be on at all.
Want me to test
All right, but now
it? Want me to get on Zoom here?
You can if you want to, but there's no reason to.
No.
yeah.
You're in the room where it happens.
Never heard that before.
So
Mhm.
now my audio is off. I'm muted,
Mhm.
but I'm seeing only me.
Because it's hearing you. It's got that predictive thing.
But when you talk, I don't see you.
I'm not on screen. Hi, would you like to see me? I'm talking.
Yeah.
Are you gonna focus? No, you're just gonna stay on, Stuart?
There's a top screen
Oh.
on there, a small screen, you see
Yeah.
that? And that's focused on the room.
Yeah, that's what it is. You were seeing your screen.
See on the top?
There we go.
Yeah.
It wasn't predictive. I don't think I turned on that technology, that piece. Hello, hello. Hello, hello.
Now you talk, Stuart.
It says my network bandwidth is low. Hello.
Yeah, that's our big
I am
problem.
not seeing anything, but he's okay.
Yeah, it doesn't do anything. But let's spotlight us in the room. We should do a spotlight so that we can.
So this allows people at
The
home.
trick is though, what happens when I share my screen?
What happens when you
Because
share?
I'm not.
You share your screen.
I can't. It's disabled.
No, it isn't.
The host has disabled screen sharing.
Okay, so I'll make you a co-host. Would you like to be a co-host? You know, it turns out all you have to do is come over here and make yourself a co-host. It's all good.
Now, the funny thing is, I designed this presentation expecting the people in the room to be able to see the screen also.
Oh.
I have slides that only the Zoomies are going to be able to see.
Oh, no.
Or, well, it'll be on there, but can that be magnified? Do we have anything to, like we do in the sanctuary, is there anything?
Yes, we could get
magnified
another.
on a-
Yes, we could get
for
another one
instance, If you could put a screen on the wall or
We
something.
could.
Or the old-fashioned stand-up home movie screens, you know?
The idea was to use one of our screens on a cart, but I thought we decided we didn't have enough time to do it, which is why we have this.
Well, but the screen that's already on a cart may be a better.
Even though it's tiny.
And you
Yeah.
can
The one on
project
a,
it in.
on a cart is tiny, but it's this.
You need a mask?
Yeah, we do. I just.
I know you are. It's okay.
I took it off because I'm drinking. I shouldn't be, but I figured before any students showed up, I could have my coffee and wake up.
You having dialysis? You see that?
My wife works there.
Oh, okay, she works there.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, they're a big organization. They're all over New Jersey.
They're all over the world.
Yeah, are they what nation? Worldwide?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You see their offices all over New Jersey. I know that.
Okay. All right, wait a second, what was I trying to do? Oh, I know. Let's just see. From the beginning. Okay. Now, if I go to share my screen.
See, but it's not highlighting you.
Yeah, I know, it's just gonna show the room.
It's doing something. Screen share probably, right? Yeah, okay.
But that may not be big enough.
That's not if you're back there.
Yeah.
I mean, I can maybe.
So I may ask you to volunteer to read some of these, but.
Well, what I will do is I'll.
Oh, you can read it from your screen? Yeah.
I'll zoom,
Okay.
Well, you read it.
Yeah.
I take it from that you are.
I'm gonna be doing a lot of talking,
That
so
you are teaching this
Yes.
morning. Okay.
I'll be back.
Put it right here. Put it. Yeah, I think we're gonna have to put it on the other side of it maybe, and then tilt it to towards the group. Morning.
How are you today?
Good, how are you? Yeah, just go that direction. Okay. Let's see if we can make this work. Eek.
Need any help?
No, I don't think so. This just was wrapped a little tight.
See, oh, there is more.
Are we all?
We have this.
Are we all wrapped a little bit?
I am not. I just had 2 days off. Sakota's my happy place. Sakota's my happy place. So
Okay.
never mind the calls I get in the middle. But Sakota's my happy place. We had a power outage and a false fire alarm, and then it caused. And our communicator was out, so we had to.
I heard board members were here in the middle of the night or something.
Yep. So we were advised because we couldn't get the repair done that we needed before.
We were left open, really.
Right, so the fire marshal had recommended that we do overnight walkthroughs, hourly is first. But if people were in the building, we would have to do hourly walkthroughs, which they did.
Okay.
But then overnight we ended up doing, I think we did,
I guess that's
5.
easier not to be on the board.
Yeah, right. I mean, only 2 people, let's be honest, the board did not all do this. This just ended up being like,
Wow.
2 people came.
What is,
So.
what is civilians really gonna do? Then?
Well, call 911. The whole point was to be able to alert 911 that there was an issue. That was the goal of that.
All right,
Yeah. Okay.
Maybe it's just you and me.
You have 5 more
What's the-
minutes,
what's
it
the
might not be.
topic today? I forget.
I forget too, I have no idea.
Something Jewish, right?
Nah.
Something Jewish. And we don't need this whole bloody mess here, right?
Hmm?
And we don't need this whole bloody mess.
Oh, no, we do.
Unless my father joins.
Well, no, we're testing. That's why. So
It's
duplicate.
just you and me, Stuart. Let's go out for coffee someplace.
It says our internet connection is unstable.
Yeah, I'm not
Isn't that
surprised.
lovely?
So we.
So I
It's
put,
not finding it. Okay.
I'm finding the display.
The display, yeah.
What if we plug this into the new gear?
Then I would need to do the Android setup,
I don't know. I have no idea.
Oh, then it wouldn't be connected to Zoom.
You gotta set it up, pick up the right input.
Yeah. So that thing is pretty awesome. It can be its own device on the internet. And so, but we didn't set it up that way, we set it up with the laptop. Okay, let me find the input.
Is the input select? Oh,
What?
okay. We're just not sure which input?
Hold on, I think, yeah, it's video.
No, it shouldn't be video.
Should be HDMI.
There was
Should
no
be HDMI
HDMI choice, so. Here, maybe this maybe this.
HDMI.
There.
There we go.
Where's,
There it is, right there.
yes?
There's HDMI 1 and there we go.
Yay!
Hoorah.
Hurrah! Okay, so I'm leaving.
All right.
Wishing you luck.
Yeah, it's better than the little screen.
Wishing you luck. We're actually, the plan is to get one of the big ones down.
Okay, that's good.
We're not alone.
We are not alone.
All right.
I really,
That,
I
that,
like
that
the,
sounds ominous,
I like
actually.
the image.
Yeah.
I mean, I like, it's a good view.
It is, it's pretty cool.
So this is just mirrored over there.
Yeah.
So that folks,
When we get a much
as we get
bigger,
into the lot.
when we get a much bigger screen or a projector,
Yeah, right.
Yeah, we'll just take one down from the wall. I mean, for now, the
Yeah.
dance floor one is a perfect one.
Mhm.
The whole time that we're in this Zoom world,
We
this
could just
virtual world, I
put it-
can't imagine.
And I wouldn't, the dance floor one, I would not put on a cart, I'd put it on a table
On a-
or.
yeah. Well, I wouldn't put it on a cart like this. I would do a real, like, the ones that are mounting carts for LCD monitors.
Well, if we're setting this room up as a hybrid classroom, I would either mount it on the wall or put it on something that is stationary.
Is this device somehow tied to this room?
Not yet.
But that, we were talking last night about that in the reopening meeting, and I think that was kind of
The idea being that
plan
this chapel, the chapel would
is
be
gonna be
the
the-
hybrid room.
hybrid room, yeah.
Yeah. Hello, good luck. We're gonna listen to the video afterwards
Sue.
to hear how
Is this the rabbi and?
Hi, Dara, how
Cantor
you
this
doing?
week.
Don't forget the canter.
Of course not, how can I
Melissa,
possibly?
how
Hi, how you doing?
Okay. And then Alana's out there, she'll be coming in soon. Yeah. You been good?
We're
As good
working
as-
on it.
Yeah, I understand.
They tell me it's a process.
I'm not gonna say I understand because I don't. So-
Right. Right.
When people say, I understand how you feel,
No,
they really don't.
no, they really don't. That's absolutely true, they don't. And you can't.
You can't.
Even I don't understand how I
Right,
feel.
exactly. So true. Do we have any YouTubers on?
So far?
We're live on YouTube. it says.
We're live on YouTube. So the answer is, I don't know. I can only see the people who come into the Zoom link. I can't see the people
So
on
you
YouTube.
don't, it's,
So we
that
may have an
information's not
audience.
available.
We
So
don't.
there's no statistics for YouTube?
We can get those later.
Oh, okay.
But when people join us on Zoom, we see them and they can ask
Absolutely.
questions and, but it wasn't,
This wasn't
Yeah.
advertised as being on
I
Zoom.
That's
know.
what I was about to say.
Yeah, because I looked at it this morning and I
I
said,
didn't
oh,
know when I came. It says in person.
so the way we're looking
There
at
was
it,
no link on the
Yes.
website for Zoom.
Right.
Yes,
There was
yes.
nothing that said on YouTube.
that was intentional.
And then as I'm driving over here,
yeah.
10 minutes ago, I get a notification on my phone. We're setting up for YouTube.
Oh,
So
I
that-
never got that.
Yeah.
I hadn't registered or anything. It didn't say you
Right.
had to
If
register.
you subscribe to Beth Ngayam on YouTube, I
Oh,
got
on
this
YouTube.
notification.
So
I
that,
get this
that
notification.
So I
was,
looked at the bulletin
right.
and it had all the different things that were listed on Zoom, and then I went back and issued.
That was actually intentional.
Yeah,
That when we planned this class, it was planned to be in person only.
okay.
Okay, which makes
Up
sense.
until now, we have tried doing the hybrid classes, it's really difficult.
It is.
Yeah.
To
You know,
to use Ann's language, which I really like, Zoomies and Roomies at the same time, it's really
See, I
hard to do.
dropped out of Torah study because the people who are here, when they're speaking, you can't hear them.
Yes,
And even though whoever's in charge repeats, you lose it.
so
So I just gave up, you know.
we are hoping to use this room
Mhm.
for hybrid classes
Oh,
that
Okay.
can accommodate people in an accessible way, online and in person.
but how
um,
about the people who are, let's say you had the class, the Torah study group here.
Yeah.
And they're speaking. How is their words gonna be picked up?
So this is why,
Yeah.
Neil's got it. This is why we didn't advertise today, because today we're recording it
Okay.
on YouTube to see how it works.
Oh.
This gizmo here, you can
That's
see
the
the whole,
microphone?
you can see the whole room, and it's supposed to be able to zero in on people speaking all in the room.
Oh,
So we're
technology,
hoping
wow.
it works, and if it does, we'll start advertising that we have this.
That's funny, years
So-
ago, my company was testing a meeting technology that allowed you it put the person who was not in the room and speaking as though they were sitting at the head of
Oh.
the table. And they actually physically appeared full size, as though they were sitting right in an empty chair at the head of the table, and they could
Oh.
participate in the meeting. It was some exorbitant amount, they were just testing it out.
Yeah.
You know, I
We were
wanna
like,
share with-
thank you, but no thanks.
I want to
But it
share
seems
with you
Now it's
interesting.
like every day.
Of
something
course,
that I
this
was
is a long
saying
time ago,
before
15
the
years ago at
virus.
least.
I was against picture taking, photograph taking during services. And I predicted with all this technology that you're going to have the rabbi and the cantor with an empty building. And it's not quite fully empty, but we barely get 20 people for Friday night. So this technology is really, in some ways, it's great, but yet we don't get to see everybody, and it's, well,
It's,
time will tell how.
I mean, I have to say, because we're talking to a lot of people, a lot of families, especially with the reopening of school and all the issues that the schools are having now with the COVID outbreaks. People are really nervous about
No,
getting
I'm
into crowds
for
right
it,
now.
I'm
It's
for it,
just-
I'm just saying,
Yeah.
it's very ironic that this has come to be.
I have to say, with Ed being ill all of last year and having services on Friday night on Zoom, that was truly a lifesaver. There's no way
Yeah.
I could have felt comfortable coming into the building. I would have been so afraid.
Oh, absolutely.
So I think we're always going to stream going forward. The question is, right now, we're trying to be maximally accommodating for people who are attending remotely. I'm not sure how long, if that's a permanent thing, if we're always gonna have, actual non-present participants, or once the major pandemic is done with, if we can go back to primarily being in the room and live streaming for people who want to tune in. Well, we have to figure all that out.
It's just gonna be a challenge. I co-chair the Shalom Club in my community, and we had our holiday brunch on Sunday. And we thought we were petrified about how is this gonna work? So we had all the food individually boxed, all the bagels individually, and it was delivered that way. And we had our room set up. We lucked out, we had a beautiful day, we had the patio. 83 people came, they were all outside,
Oh, right.
except for like a couple people who were afraid of the sun who went in, maybe 5 people went inside. They were all outside, some masked, some not masked, outside, but people so glad to physically be together.
Right.
Yeah.
Close the door? You want the door open?
Well, I'm wondering at this point, it doesn't look like we're getting anybody,
No Zoom.
Right.
you know, on Zoom. I think we probably, from the discussion here, have enough recorded that we'll know if it's working or not.
Okay.
Is there any interest in going outside? Or do we just want to stay here and?
Comfortable. I mean, if it's not a
We
problem.
comfortable?
I can take the door.
But you know, we
can't
were
decide.
on YouTube before the virus, right?
Yes, we were
So-
streaming before the
so,
virus,
yeah,
but
So, I mean, it's something,
now
We
we're
do take this
making
different
more use of
streaming.
Zoom. Although Zoom is getting in our way now.
yeah,
We're learning things, yes.
okay.
In order to facilitate more working from home and more, you know, meetings from home,
Ah,
Zoom has, you know, they're trying to improve their product.
right.
They're getting much more aggressive about eliminating background noise,
Okay.
which is wonderful if you're working at home with a barking dog or kids in another room watching television. But for services where you have piano, guitar, singing,
Oh.
choir,
Oh.
it really messed up our sound.
Wow.
People really complained that it was, you know, we couldn't understand because the sound was terrific. We knew it was great. We knew it was getting into Zoom correctly. But Zoom was kind of trying to, you know, oh, it's background noise, and it just made a mess out of
That's
it.
interesting.
Oh,
So, we're still playing, we're still learning.
wow.
Yeah, there were glitches on, Yisker, we lost
Yes,
David Fenster playing his music.
Oh, really?
That got garbled.
Oh, because
Some pieces of that.
yeah, I bet it was, Zoom probably figured, oh, it's your background music, we don't need that. Can't hear the speaker if there's music playing in the background, so.
interesting.
That's it, yeah, it's, I figured that out.
But I hear about Ann's point about Zoomies and Roomies. Our community book club had been on Zoom, and then it started to meet in the room. And then there was a question, some people were nervous, and we tried the hybrid version, it was impossible.
Yeah, it's really hard to do.
Impossible. People trying to carry on a conversation and the people on Zoom trying to break in, they couldn't hear everybody, right?
So, let's get started.
Okay.
Let's have class.
What's the topic? I don't even know what the topic is.
So,
Partnering with God is what I,
yeah, the topic for the whole year,
Who's this guy?
yeah, who is this guy? The topic for the whole year, we're calling it Great Debates.
Mhm.
Who's this guy?
Yeah, we're calling it Great Debates. And today I want to do half and half. Today is a little bit of an introduction, and we're also going to get into one of the Great Debates. So I will say that a lot of everything we're doing this year in this Nosh and Knowledge is going to be text-based, mostly from Torah. We're also drawing a lot from Talmud. If you're curious about Talmud, that's going to be our focus on Sundays.
Right.
So it's interesting because I'm making an effort today to not say too much about what Talmud is and how it developed and why it is the way it is, because that's really Sunday's topic. So I guess, I don't know, I'm struggling with if I want to do some stuff today that's going to get repeated on Sundays.
Well, so what? You know, I want to tell you something. Many, many years ago, Sharon, our past president, was relatively new. We were meeting in the auditorium, and we're coming out on one of Rabbi's class. Oh, these people, they know so much. I said, don't be so impressed. We hear it over and over. It's about time we remembered it. Okay, so don't worry about repeating, because we need to hear it over and over.
See, we're on YouTube, by the way.
Oh,
We're on
somebody's
YouTube.
on?
We're on YouTube.
that's us.
Oh, okay.
You're talking a lot.
And it sounds good. Yeah, we can really hear it.
Okay, good.
So yeah, correct. It's working. All right, so I guess one of the things that I want to touch on Sunday that I think is also valuable to at least bring up here is that
I'm trying to close it down. Go ahead.
in Talmud in particular, people's attitude toward religion and what these questions meant was different from the way that we think about this stuff now.
All right.
That, I mean, you're here today because this material is important to you, but by and large, it's not the most important thing in our lives right now, right? People don't relate to religion that way anymore. But in their day, when the rabbis were discussing these topics, it felt a lot like life and death to them. And that's gonna be a critical piece to remember for all of the stuff that we're talking about this year, is that when these guys, and they were all guys at that time, were sitting around the table, they weren't just sitting around the table, I can't say a word because we're on handy camera, but they weren't just bullying.
Yeah.
They were really adamant about this stuff. Not every point of view that's expressed was a point of view that people held.
Right.
And that's also important.
That's why they
they were discussing more than arguing.
Uh-huh.
And it was very common for somebody to say something outlandish to get a discussion started.
Uh-huh.
This, by the way, is the history of why we have the 4 questions. Somebody needed to ask a question to get the conversation started at the Seder. Right? The 4 questions are given in Talmud as, if nobody can think of a good question, here are some you can try. They're the fallback.
So there were seders before the 4 questions were asked.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
And then at some point in history, somebody said, let's inject this as.
No, it actually, what's really funny, you'll find a lot of this. If you go into Talmud, you'll find a lot of things. Passover, again, we're going to deal with Passover as part of the Sunday class, so I don't want to spend a lot of time. But you'll find a lot of things that you thought either are required by Talmud or, have been in Jewish history forever. And you find, as you're looking at the Talmud, that either A, the Talmud says, you don't need to do this.
Right.
Or B, they're discussing whether this should be a part of the Seder, and maybe let's put this in, or we shouldn't do this. This is a really great example.
I was about to ask that.
This is a really great example, right? If you go to any traditional synagogue, and I'm lumping a lot of branches in traditional, most of them will require that men wear a kippah, right? It's the law. It's Jewish law.
Right.
You look at Talmud, there is a discussion in Talmud about whether one is required to cover one's head.
Interesting.
Right? And the consensus is no, not required.
I think the challenge today,
I believe that.
But
the challenge today in the modern world is to, as you say, find meaning in looking at all this stuff that's so ancient, that some of it's so ridiculous. I remember they argue over how many cups of wine, Passover, and then there was one, because I studied Talmud.
But I want you to understand, though, that for them, it wasn't ridiculous.
No, absolutely.
But even they had their forms of ridiculousness.
Well, like, when is the world going to end? They were
where they
arguing 400 years. No, this one says 600 years. Were they serious about that?
How serious
When
about?
is the world going to end? I remember when I studied, there was
Well, listen, you have to understand, and again, we're going to talk about what Judaism was like in the first century when this stuff began on Sunday. But you have to understand that one of the most common beliefs across the whole Middle East is that the world is going to end any minute now.
Oh, gosh. Uh-huh. Okay.
That this kind of thinking was very, very prevalent.
Why did that, why?
But it wasn't only there.
Because
No, but why did they think
No,
that?
that was the world.
Well, that
They
was the
didn't-
Middle
they
East.
didn't know that
They
there
didn't
was
know
a
the
world
rest of it,
outside
but
of the
in
Middle
other
East.
No,
cultures, they also had the
they,
same
they
feeling.
knew that there was a world outside because they were suffering under foreign rulers.
All right.
But they didn't know that it extended up to,
No, no,
what we
it-
now call the Orient and,
Right.
you know, the Far East and the
Yeah.
Americas, they didn't even know that existed.
Yeah.
Right, the New World was completely unknown.
Right, it was unknown.
But so was there something that triggered this fear that the world is going to end?
So you usually get this kind of a belief when conditions are so bad
Oh, okay.
that really the only way for people to cope was to believe that God is going to step in at any moment and change things up.
Oh, okay.
They knew
And
about,
right the horrendous wrong.
they knew the
that's
story
being
of
done.
Noah.
Right.
Yeah. So, again, we can talk about that more on Sunday.
Okay.
Believe it or not, our topic for today, I don't know if I want to tell you the topic. So the text we're dealing with
Well, why
today,
do we hear that?
Okay.
the text we're dealing with today is Sodom and Gomorrah,
Okay.
right? Hope you know the story.
I think I know.
Yeah, I have it in detail, and I'd like
A lot.
to take a close look at the text. Yeah, if you've gone through it in Torah study.
A lot.
Do I have any volunteers?
Oh, I can't see that.
I'll read, I can see.
I don't have my glasses with me today.
Yeah, maybe we'll take turns.
Genesis 18, except it says 20. Oh, chapter 18, verse 20.
Chapter 18, verse 20.
Then the Eternal said, the outrage of Sodom and Gomorrah is so great, and their sin so grave. I will go down to see whether they have acted together, according to the outcry that has reached me. If not, I will take note. The angels went on from there to Sodom, while Abraham remained standing before the Eternal. Abraham came forward and said, will you sweep away the innocent along with the guilty? What if there should be 50 innocent within the city? Will you then wipe out the place and not forgive it for the sake of the innocent 50 who are in it? Far be it from you to do such a thing, to bring death upon the innocent as well as the guilty, so that innocent and guilty fare alike. Far be it from you. Shall not the judge of all the earth deal justly?
Them are harsh words to be speaking to God, yeah?
It's a challenge.
Yeah, this is,
Well, that's what Jews do. They argue, they challenge.
and this, you see a lot of rabbinic thought about why this makes Abraham so much more worthy than Noah.
Right. Right.
Noah just,
Right.
Complied.
So God tells Abraham that the city's going to be destroyed, and Abraham argues and argues and bargains and fights for the rights of the innocent. God tells Noah the whole world is going to be destroyed, and Noah says, okay. Is that,
What do you need
there's
me
no
to do?
argument at all.
Right.
Bless you.
see, on the tree.
Yeah.
You're already equipped.
So exactly. So let me ask, this is a trick question, by the way. What was the sin of Sodom? What made them so bad that they had to be wiped off the earth?
They were
Remember.
they were like wild, right? They
But
were
I don't
Were
wild.
they idol worshippers?
I don't know.
I mean, they were a wild city, but I wonder whether
What does
that's
that
what it
mean? Yeah, what
was.
were they actually doing? I don't know if we know. Did we know?
We must know.
So, and I will tell you that the Christian answer and the Jewish answer, very different.
Oh,
Yeah.
of course.
We're Jews. What's the Jewish
The
answer?
Jews
Christian
weren't
answer,
following, probably the Jews weren't following what God
the
wanted.
Christian answer, you can take your hint from the name of the town,
Oh, Sodom.
Yeah, right. Well,
right?
yeah.
So let's see how they get that, right? Anyway, we'll get there in a minute, but Abraham is very concerned that a whole city is going to be wiped out. He's very concerned about what?
About people who were innocent.
Oh, that there might be innocent people in the
Yeah.
city, right? So, he throws out this number 50 and says, are you going to wipe out these 50 innocent people along with the guilty, right? And
It feels down.
I love how he does it, though. And the Eternal answered, if I find within the city of Sodom 50 innocent ones, I will forgive the whole place for their sake. Abraham spoke up, saying, "Here I venture to speak to my God, I who am but dust and ashes." It's a great quote.
Mhm.
What if the 50 innocent should lack 5? Would you destroy the whole city for the want of 5? I love this bargaining tactic, right? Instead of saying, "But what if there are only 45?" He doesn't do that. He says, "What if 5 are missing?
Yeah.
You're still going to destroy the whole city just because 5 are missing." I love it, right? And God answers, "I will not destroy if I find 45 there." But he spoke to God again and said, what if 40 should be found there? And God answered, "I will not do it for the sake of the 40. And he said, "Let my God not be angry if I go on. What if 30 should be found there?" And God answered, "I will not do it if I find 30 there." And he said, "I venture to speak again to my God. What if 20 should be found there?" And God answered, "I will not destroy for the sake of the 20. And he said, "Let not my God be angry if I speak, but this last time, what if 10 should be found there?" And God answered, "I will not destroy for the sake of the 10. All right, so he bargains. It seems like a pretty straightforward bargaining session here. And God keeps agreeing. And of course, the rabbis ask, why? Why does God let this go on? Why does God even permit this little pisher?
Is he testing Abraham?
This is a conclusion that many of the rabbis reached, that this is a test.
Who's testing who?
That God is testing Abraham.
Is Abraham testing God?
It could be.
But God testing Abraham to see how far his convictions will carry him to continue to challenge.
To be followed up later on.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
the fact that Abraham is arguing for justice,
Right.
the fact that he's fighting for the rights of people, this is in a way the story. And remember, again, I have to quote old friend Sandra Katz, Rabbi Sandra Katz, who used to say, "Be careful not to confuse the character in the Bible labeled God with God."
Okay.
It's a great quote.
Interesting,
It
yeah.
is a great quote.
Because, at its heart, Torah is a teaching tool. The stories in Torah are meant to teach us things. And sometimes God in the Torah does and says things that feel contrary to what we would expect of God. But, if you're looking in Torah to get a complete unified theology, you're going to be in trouble. Right? It's not written that way. It's written as a teaching tool. So, here, I guess you can ask the question again, why does God permit Abraham to go through this exercise? Why doesn't he do the same approach that he does with Job? He says, "Where the hell were you when I created the universe? Shut up. What do you know?" But that's not, again, because they're teaching about different things. So you can, the character labeled God in the Bible is going to behave differently because there's a different lesson.
Mm-hmm.
So here, clearly, it's being allowed because God wants Abraham to argue. It's interesting. I said justice, but that's not what Abraham's arguing for. I guess he is.
Mercy is arguing for mercy. Well, in some senses, it's
Compassion
justice.
as well, compassion.
And I love it. I love it when the stuff we teach comes together.
Yeah.
When I did the class on Musar practice, we talked about justice being a continuum and mercy being a continuum. And we teach about Kabbalah. Justice and mercy are seen as opposing forces, and you have to have both. And the rabbis fully understood that you have to have both. The way I like to put it, this is mine, I'm going to trademark it. Justice without mercy is unjust.
Mm-hmm.
Mercy without justice is not merciful.
So
They have to work together. To have justice and mercy, you need both. You can't have one without the other. Because the way the rabbis understood it, justice all by itself, this is the law, you transgress, you're dead. This incidentally is how Christians understand Jewish law.
Mhm.
When Christians say this is why you need Jesus, because Jewish law is so deadly. There are so many things, so many ways to transgress. And if you break one of God's laws, you're sunk.
You know what that reminds me of? It stayed in my head. I remember stupid things. Many years ago, there was a man on death row, and he was innocent, but there was a technicality. They killed him anyway. So that's justice? There's no mercy. You know, I mean, it was crazy.
Yeah.
So, what are you gonna do?
So yeah, you could kind of have a discussion here about whether what Abraham is arguing for is for justice or for mercy or for some combination of the two. But he's very concerned that innocent people might be killed along with the guilty. And he
But
gets God down
In
to
this
the
case, guilty people might get away with it, might not be punished for their sins.
And what's
But
really
isn't it
interesting here,
considered to be a worse crime
All
to
right.
punish the
Innocent.
innocent?
Than to let the guilty get away with it.
Correct.
Yeah.
Well, you'll get him on the next time, the bad guy. That's what a lot of cops say.
that's the American way.
Yeah, and then it goes, I
Watch
think
a
it
lot
goes
of
down
cop
to
shows.
one,
They
right?
say, we'll get him.
No,
10 was the bottom,
10.
10 was the bottom
10
line?
was it,
10 was it, and
right? You need at least a minion.
God agreed to the 10, right?
Yep.
He agreed.
Yep.
If they're 10, I'll save the 6.
Guess whose turn it is?
What?
It's your turn.
Oh. Then the Eternal said, the outrage of Sodom and Gomorrah is so great and their sins so grave. I will go down to see whether they have acted altogether according to the outcry that has reached me. If not, I will take note. The angels went on from there to Sodom, while Abraham remained standing before the Eternal. Abraham came forward and said, will you sweep
Oh,
away
I
the...
think we.
What?
I think we had that. Yeah, that was a repeated slide.
Oh.
This is the new one. So
Oh, 18,
we just,
19.
what I'm gonna do is go back and, I will not destroy for the sake of the 10, right? And then we go to here. The Eternal finished speaking to Abraham.
And departed. And Abraham returned to his place. The 2 angels arrived in Sodom in the evening, as Lot was sitting in the gate of Sodom. When Lot saw them,
Who is Lot, by the way?
Abraham's nephew.
There you go, okay.
when Lot saw them, he rose to greet them, and bowing low with his face to the ground, he said, please turn aside to your servant's house to spend the night, and bathe your feet. Then you may be on your way early. But they said, no, we will spend the night in the square. But he urged them strongly, so they turned his way and entered his house.
Lot knows something that presumably the angels do not.
Did his house. He prepared a feast for them and baked unleavened bread, matzah, and they ate. They had not yet lain down when the townspeople, the men of Sodom, young and old, all the people to the last man, gathered about the house. And they shouted to Lot and said to him, where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us that we may be intimate with them.
So here you have the Christian take on the story,
Vigilante.
where the English word sodomy comes from.
Yeah, they want to be intimate.
Yeah. All right, so Lot went out to them, to the entrance, shut the door behind him, and said, I beg you, my friends.
1 second, Cantor.
Yeah.
In the Hebrew, is that what it implies? Because the original monks and whatever, they all read Hebrew as well as Latin, so they could, I believe they did anyway.
I know that there were only a very few
Okay,
of
so they
the
weren't
early
translating from
Christians
Hebrew.
were reading Hebrew. They all looked
Aramaic,
at it.
right?
No, the very earliest Christians spoke Aramaic.
I mean, Jesus didn't speak Hebrew.
Nope.
No, but I was thinking of, how does this sort of thing get perpetrated? What did the actual language say?
No, that is it.
That isn't?
Yep,
Okay.
that's what the Hebrew
Okay,
says.
okay, that
Right.
was my question.
But
We
this
want
book-
to know them in the biblical sense.
So this book
Yeah.
was written 1,200 years before the time of Jesus.
Right, but I wanted to know, as things get perpetrated
Right.
into Christian
Right.
theology,
Right.
what is
Well,
it that
this,
they
I mean,
were
it does
coming
become,
from?
it does become important because, you know, even the quote in Isaiah that Christian swears about Mary, the Hebrew doesn't say virgin,
Right,
Mhm.
it says young
Right.
girl.
it says a young girl, right? And, yeah, I mean, there are other issues with that as well, but it, you know, if you're reading it in the Latin, it says virgin.
Correct, that's what I was just like, where did that come from? But okay, that's what the Hebrew said.
Words meant different
What-
things at different times.
Oh, of course.
Actually, no, there are different words in Hebrew and in Latin for virgin and a young lady. And, you know, the Hebrew says a girl and the Latin says a virgin.
Oh.
It's
As we understand what a virgin
Yeah.
means, yeah.
Um, anyway, they said, so Lot says to them, I beg you, my friends, do not commit such a wrong. Look, I have 2 daughters who have not known a man. Let me bring them out to you, and you may do to them as you please.
Wonderful, thanks a lot.
But do not do anything to these men, since they have come under the shelter of my roof. But they said, stand back. The fellow, they said, came here as an alien, and already he acts the ruler. Now we will deal worse with you than with them. And they pressed hard against the person of Lot, and moved forward to break the door. But the angels stretched out their hands and pulled Lot into the house with them and shut the door. And the people who were at the entrance of the house, young and old, were struck with blinding light so that they were helpless to find the entrance. So, which is, it's fun because Lot is trying to protect the angels and they wind up protecting him.
That's a strange story.
It's a very strange story.
Yeah.
But, and again, there's some interesting things hidden in it, which we'll get to. You want me to take it, or you want to take it?
Okay. Then the men said to Lot, whom else have you here? Sons-in-law, your sons and daughters, or anyone else that you have in the city? Bring them out to the place. Bring them out of the place. For we are about to destroy this place, because the outcry against them before the Eternal has become so great that the Eternal has sent us to destroy it. So Lot went out and spoke to his sons-in-law who had married his daughters, and said, up, get out of this place, for the Eternal is about to destroy the city. But he seemed to his son-in-laws as one who jests. As dawn broke, the angels urged Lot on, saying, up, take your wife and your 2 remaining daughters, lest you be swept away because of the iniquity of this city. Still he delayed. So the angels seized his hand and the hands of his wife and his 2 daughters in the Eternal's mercy on him, and brought him out and left him outside the city.
All right. When they had brought them outside, one said, flee for your life, and look not behind you, nor stop anywhere in the plain. Flee to the hills, lest you be swept away. But Lot said to them, you have been so gracious to your servant, and have already shown me so much kindness in order to save my life, but I cannot flee to the hills, lest the disaster overtake me and I die. Look, that town there is near enough to flee to. It is such a little place. Let me flee there. It is such a little place. Repeat it, notice.
Mm-hmm.
And let my life be saved. And they replied, very well, I will grant you this favor too, and I will not annihilate the town of which you have spoken. Hurry, flee there, for I cannot do anything until you arrive there. Hence the town came to be called Zoar. Okay. That's the whole story that I got for you right there.
So where's the Lot's wife turning into a salt and all that?
That comes later. It
That's
comes
later in the
next.
chapter? Okay.
I didn't include it here because I really wanted to work with the section of text that really talks about justice and mercy and crime and punishment and so on. So I will ask again. I'm cheating a little bit because I could have given you a little more of the early part of the story that the rabbis focused on, because they disagree with the Christian take on the sin of Solomon.
What do they say?
It's so interesting.
Okay.
So the rabbis say, nuh-uh, you know, this thing about bringing the angels out so that they can be intimate with them, it's there to get your attention.
Interesting.
It's there to, to really drive the point home. But the point, and again, it's fascinating to me because it speaks to the differences between the way that Jews and Christians look at biblical texts. And you'll see this all the time, especially when they come to your door. They'll want to quote you a sentence or a phrase, right? In the Jewish study of text, context is everything. Everything. You always learn more about something that's in the Bible by looking at what came before and what came after. So if you look at the whole story in context, again, I didn't give this part to you, but I'm hoping that that we remember enough of the story. Abraham, at the beginning of this episode, is sitting in the entrance of his tent, presumably recovering from having circumcised himself in the Torah portion that came right before this, right? So he's sitting in the entrance to his tent. He sees these three people coming towards him in the desert, and what does he do?
Welcomes them hospitality.
Right? He may be sitting there in pain, recovering from circumcision. He gets up and runs out to them and says, please come to my tent, relax, take your shoes off.
Have a bite.
Right. He orders cheese to be brought to them right away and asks for a lamb to be slaughtered so that he can prepare a meal for these guys. It's like an incredible show of hospitality. This, by the way, is a model for Jewish hospitality and Muslim hospitality as well, because they trace their ancestry to Abraham. And pretty much all of the episodes in Abraham's life serve both for the rabbis and for the for the Islamic community as a role model. So Abraham welcomes these people into his tent. He caters to them. He serves them. Offers them a place to spend the night before they continue on their travels. And it's after that they tell him he's going to have a child, and also about the imminent destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. And Abraham tries to argue to save the town. Right? Now look at the next piece, which we read. When they show up at Sodom, who meets them? Lot meets them, and what does he do? What's his...
Same thing, hospitality.
Right? He knows about the town. He urges them not to stay in the square because he knows what will happen. Right?
I'll witness.
He begs them to come to his home, and again, we'll wash your feet. He feeds them. You see this show of hospitality, and then you contrast it to the people of Sodom, to their response to the three strangers.
And they also referred to him as an alien, so I guess he wasn't.
Well,
a
because
native.
Lot's not a native, he's Abraham's nephew.
Right, and he
They
ended
arrived.
up there somehow.
It's interesting, if you read in Torah, there seems to be this deep distrust of city folk. Like all through the stories of Torah.
True.
So they show up in Sodom. Lot, his response to the visit from strangers is to welcome them and feed them and offer them hospitality. The reaction of the people of Sodom is completely the opposite. And even their comment about Lot being a resident alien speaks to their lack of hospitality. And the rabbis, looking at the whole story in context, say that was the great sin of Sodom, is that they're so horrible to strangers. They have not a scrap of hospitality. And you contrast it to the way that Abraham and Lot received the strangers, it just becomes really glaring, for the rabbis anyway, that this is the issue. But still, Abraham, in the context of this whole story, raises this great issue about collective punishment. Right? Is collective punishment, and it's not the only instance in Torah. Look at how the Egyptians suffered under the plagues. Right? Was it fair to punish all the Egyptians because of what Pharaoh did?
Clearly none.
Well, then, if it's not fair, why does God do it?
we've had this argument before.
Yeah.
that,
The problem with the modern day is like, you're sort of taught, well, at least we used to be taught by Rabbi Wisnia that, God doesn't do supernatural things. So in real life, you're supposed to have this attitude that things happen. But yet when you're reading the Bible, you have to look at God a different way, that God does control all these different things. So I think it's a conflict.
But that's how people thought,
Yeah.
not just in
No,
Judaism,
I know,
but
but
in
when we're
every other
reading these
religion.
stories, how God is doing this, and I'm just saying it's a story. We have to see what we're learning from it and not really believe that God did this, that, or whatever.
But that's the most interesting part to me, is as you're talking about the Torah, and you have to think about it that way, is the teaching tools.
Right.
Teaching tools have a bunch of
Right,
different
but that's
ways
what I'm
of
saying.
approaching things, but that's
And
interesting.
these are stories to give us a lesson.
Okay, so if that's the case, and that's the way I approach Torah. It's always an argument that I have with the younger kids, my little B'nai Mitzvah students and the high school kids. They always want to know, and it's not true, it didn't really happen. To me, that's a far less interesting question than what truths are in it.
Right. What do we learn? What do we learn from this?
Mm-hmm.
Right? I don't really care what Abraham actually said to Sarah. I mean, first of all, even Hebrew speakers wouldn't have understood whatever language they were speaking. Babylonian, who knows?
Right.
But that's a great approach for kids, and I guess for anybody else. It certainly isn't the way that I went to Hebrew school.
Yeah.
But it's a great approach because it says, okay, this is what we're presented with. Now let's think our way through it. And
Right.
what do we get from it, as opposed to this is exactly what happened. We don't know exactly what
Right.
happened.
But, again, the classical Jewish approach to Torah has always been, this is not a new thing.
No, I know.
This is not a modern thing where we say, regardless of the historicity of it, I'm trying to be very modern here. This has always been the rabbinic approach, is what is this trying to tell us? What is it trying to teach us? What
How does
do
it
we
make
learn?
our lives better?
Okay, what can you take away from this
Right.
and
To
apply
make
here?
life better
Yeah.
in 2021.
Right. So, again, we like to think of ourselves as so modern and, we understand these concepts of justice and mercy. The very fact that this argument between Abraham and God is recorded in a document that, the oldest written Torah that we have, the oldest written copy, is about 2,000 years old. We know the stories date back at least to the 10th century BCE. So, 3,000 years at a minimum. Like, finished in the form that we have it now, goes back like 3,000 years. And the fact that this argument discussion between Abraham and God about justice and mercy
Survives.
it's not so much that it survived, but they were thinking about this stuff then. They were wrestling with these issues then.
Well, human beings haven't changed.
Yes, absolutely.
Humans
Human
are still
nature
fighting
hasn't
the
changed.
same or
Not a
arguing the
bit.
same
Well,
arguments.
3,000 years ago, we were not cavemen. We were civilized people living in towns and being productive.
But the training of thinking things through and debating them is the utility that I would suggest, I'll just put it out there, is sorely missing in education today.
Clearly.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Across the board.
You've touched on one of my pet peeves, which is that, I've spoken about this before. I think it's critically important for our young students to be able to distinguish between fact and opinion, especially today.
Yes.
Mhm.
However,
They don't.
They are bombarded with opinion.
so they,
on social
yes, they
media.
don't,
Correct.
so on the one hand, they're not always successful at distinguishing fact from opinion. On the other hand, and this is my pet peeve, we came across this years ago in an article that was written by a university philosopher who pointed out that the way that kids are taught in schools in America to distinguish between fact and opinion leads them to believe that there's no such thing as moral truth.
Hmm.
Oh, yeah, you talked about this
Yes,
already.
and to me, that's a dangerous position as well.
I agree with that.
You know, to teach children that anything that talks about right or wrong is an opinion, I think that's a mistake.
Yeah, there clearly needs to be some universals that.
But that's not, you're
No,
right,
that's
moral
not.
relativism is exactly the way kids are
My
taught.
universal is different from that person's universal, and your universal is,
But when you strip
what
away.
makes universal
So
universal?
for adults, I would say, can we all agree,
That's a good
that-
phrase. Yeah.
can we all agree that murder, not talking about killing, murder is wrong? Can we
And
start there?
define murder. Murder is killing without cause, or
Ending someone's life
what's?
is murder.
So
How
murder-
would you define murder then?
My definition of murder, because we're taking it out of the self-defense or.
Yeah, right, self-defense
you know,
is another thing.
Or what a soldier does on the battlefield.
Right,
Murder is when you decide to take another person's life, you plan it, and you execute that
okay,
plan.
that's a pretty clear definition.
Regardless of the purpose or reason.
When you decide to take another person's
You've
life
chosen.
and you plan the act and then you follow through on the act.
Okay, you kill my wife. I plan to kill you. Is that murder?
So
It is.
the thing is,
You are a murderer.
the thing is,
or I'm gonna kill you back.
But you're, so you're both murderers.
so the thing is, if I kill your wife and you are, I'm looking for the word. You're
I'm outraged.
outraged and you.
Emotionally,
You're
know,
driven.
You're
I'm outraged,
and
I
you-
sleep on it and say, I'm gonna get that.
No, I want to take sleeping on it out of the picture,
Okay,
right? I kill your wife, and you turn around and kill me. Right,
well, I don't plan that, that's a reaction.
that's
Right,
where I want to start,
Yeah.
because we could say crime of passion, we could
Right.
say, I mean, but if I kill your wife and you scheme for a week
I go
about
out
how
the
you're
next day
going
to
to
buy
end
a
my
gun
life.
so I can
Yeah,
kill you.
that's murder.
that's murder. So you're in effect both murderers.
No, I'm not
Am I
saying,
wrong for killing a vet?
Well, you've committed murder.
Have I?
Yes.
yes, you have.
Yeah, if you
Yes.
were,
And, you know, like in an American court,
Yeah.
we would say, you know, there might be mitigating circumstances, we might reduce your sentence.
Right,
In Jewish law,
that's murder.
that's murder. Right?
I buy that.
It's not,
That's okay.
right, it's not my job,
Rather than I going to the police and the authorities and say, this guy killed him, lock him up.
Right, right.
right? So it gets tricky, I'm not arguing that it's a clear-cut, always easy distinction, but, you know, I think if we put the premeditated piece in and say, if you plan to take somebody's life and then carry that plan out, we're gonna call that murder.
Okay.
And we all agree that that's a bad thing,
Yes.
right? I mean, you might be justified, but it's still a bad thing.
Ending a life is bad, yes. Let's agree to that.
All right, and you know, but again, because I use the word bad or wrong, that's an opinion, it's just my opinion. Murder is bad, that's my opinion.
Oh, I
So-
see what
And that,
happened.
To me, that's a dangerous way
Yeah, I
to
would
try
agree.
and parse, you know, fact from opinion. You know, with kids will fight you all the way until you get to torturing puppies, and they'll say, oh, that's just bad, that's just wrong. And I'm like, but wait a second. If that's just wrong,
Then,
then clearly, you know, you're willing to admit that at a certain point I've crossed the line and it's wrong.
at the puppy level.
And that's not an opinion. Right? But that's, yeah, that's rough.
so,
So let's get back to our collective punishment,
yes.
which is, in a way, this is the discussion. I won't call it an argument because they're not, it's very civil what happens between Abraham and God. And you'll find this throughout Jewish history. No, we're not perfect, we're not always civil, but this is the ideal. When we disagree, the ideal is to sit down and discuss. It's not easy. And I'm going to hopefully I hope I don't make too many people angry, but I'm gonna hopefully talk on Sunday about how not easy that can get. Especially when you're worked up and invested in your point of view, it's really hard to sit down with somebody who disagrees, but it's so important. And this is the way, with a few exceptions, this is the way that the rabbis approached their disagreements. That they didn't always agree, and in fact, again, more on this on Sunday, but there actually were rules that they all pretty much abided by, if that's the way to say it, abode by. There were rules where if you are in the minority, you could still hold your opinion, but there were, there are limits to.
Well, it's the notion of, I have spoken, I've been listened to, I've been heard.
Yeah.
People did not necessarily agree with me, but I've had the right to speak and offer my opinion and persuade people to the extent that I could. I didn't get there.
Right.
Yes.
I mean, incidentally, we have the same exact rules on the board at Beth Haim, right? With board, we have a discussion. We usually don't agree. Things are not usually unanimous. But if you're in the minority and you get outvoted, then the job of being a board member is to support the position that the board has taken.
Correct.
Even if it's not, if I didn't vote for it, but it's.
And I would further add to that, in the organizations I've been a part of or led, at the end of it, when you leave that room, you speak with one voice. So there isn't somebody who goes into the corner and says, they all did that, I was against it from the start.
Yeah.
That if you're
it's not easy to do, but that's the job.
If you're a part of this group,
right,
and you have the chance to be heard, and you have the chance to debate, and you have the chance to convince people, and at the end, it didn't work that way, your job now is to say, we speak with one voice, so that.
Right, and let's be realistic. Anyone who's ever been an employee anywhere of anything is familiar with that. At a certain point, even if you feel differently, you have to support the organization. That's just, that's life.
Just keep your mouth shut if you don't want to say anything.
If you're Jewish, that's all.
Yes.
So, on the one hand, our text with Sodom and Gomorrah, I don't know, does it support collective punishment? And by that I mean, is it okay to punish a whole group for something that people within the group have done or are doing?
I think it depends. Some people try to teach the other people, interfere, speak up. If they didn't speak up, they just let it go. If you don't, there's a saying, if you don't say anything, you're part of the problem, or whatever.
If you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem.
It's really funny because I looked it up this morning.
Oh, okay.
The only thing that is necessary for evil to triumph
is for good men.
Good men to be silent.
Nothing.
Right? I was trying to find out who actually said it.
Yeah.
We don't know.
Oh, yeah,
Pastor, somebody? Was it a pastor?
One of the opinions was this guy.
It's Holocaust related, right? Is it?
No, that was a requote.
Okay.
And that it's been around.
That phrase.
The idea of it, not that exact phrase, but that precise idea that.
Speak up.
Right, that idea has been around easily since the 1700s. You can find it, not the same quote, but quotes very much along those lines.
Yeah, you gotta speak up if you see something.
Yeah, I think the first written examples go to the 1920s
Oh, interesting.
of, all that is necessary for that pretty much that exact idea. But yeah, it's been around, it's been in circulation for a while. It's been attributed to Kennedy, it's been attributed to lots of other people, but it's old. It's an old idea. But an important one. And again, even if we look at the plagues in Egypt, or since it's the text in front of us, let's focus on Sodom and Gomorrah, right? Is it appropriate to punish the entire town because there are evil people in it doing evil things.
It happened to Noah. It punished the entire world because of
It happens-
two people being evil.
It appears to happen a lot.
Also, I was thinking like of the children, but yet if the children are seeing their parents do things, they're gonna do the same thing when they grow up. In other words, they might be innocent.
That gets into even trickier ground.
Yeah.
Because the Torah and Jewish law are pretty adamant about that children should never be punished on account of their parents.
Yeah, but if they're gonna grow up and be like their parents, you know what I'm saying?
Well,
they're gonna learn.
The Jewish take on that is that everyone, including the children of very bad people, have choices.
Okay.
And, they may be at a disadvantage because of who their parents were, but they can still choose to be different.
Well, that's true.
So
You see
isn't
people
that
growing
there's-
up in ghettos and some end up going to school and some of them are in prison, so.
Right. I mean, there are plenty of stories about the children of Nazis
Yeah.
who grew up to be very different people from their parents.
Right.
But isn't that the point, though, that if people have choices, so the collective Sodom and Gomorrah, the people who actually acted actively, the other people had choices to not do that. We don't know whether they did or they didn't. You gotta assume that they made a choice. If at the very least, they didn't do anything to curb it.
Right. All that is necessary for the triumph of
Right.
evil.
Right.
Right? And, I mean, one of the things, and again, this is, I'm asking you to change your point of view a little bit, because as Americans, we grow up very focused on what our rights are. Right? That's what the American dream is all about. We all have these rights that nobody can take away from us.
Life, liberty.
They didn't grow up in my
happiness.
parents' household
Yeah.
where they focused on what your responsibilities were.
Well, but that is actually the Jewish approach, going all the way back to Torah. It's really interesting. It's the reason why so many of our laws are in the negative, right?
Thou shalt
Yeah,
not.
because Judaism Torah is interested in our freedom. And the idea is we're going to enumerate the things that you should not do and everything else is okay. We're not going to legislate how you need to live your life. We're just going to say don't kill, don't steal, don't commit adultery. You stay away from this stuff and then you can go live your life.
But the positive one is honor your father and your mother, and
Yes.
thou shalt keep the Sabbath.
I'm not saying there aren't
No,
positive ones,
but that's interesting that there's the here's some things you really need to focus on, responsibilities, and here's the things you can't do.
right. And that's the next step is that, again, the classical Jewish approach to how you live your life is not necessarily the freedom focus, but the responsibility focus. That you have these responsibilities as a Jew. You're free to live your life as you please. Here are the no-nos, and here are your responsibilities. This is what you need to do as a human being.
It's a very interesting point of view, but that clearly was the basis in my parents' household, from both of them, was that there was a lot of freedom for me and my sisters growing up. And here were the things that you were accountable to do and
Yes.
to be a part of. Those things were not movable. These other things, you were free to do them.
So trying to tie all this together, because we are at the end of our time today, you have freedoms, and especially in the Jewish view, you have responsibilities. And when we look at the idea of collective punishment, at the idea of how is it fair to punish an entire town for the misbehavior of maybe most of the people, but not all the people, how is it fair to punish all of Egypt for Pharaoh's enslavement of the Hebrews? And the answer is, at least what the Torah seems to be trying to tell us, is that there is collective responsibility. If you think about it, Pharaoh could not have enslaved all of the Hebrews by himself. For that to happen requires the cooperation of the population.
He had his military, he had his
But where does the military come from?
population.
So Pharaoh could not, acting alone, could not have perpetrated this, according to the Torah, 400 years of servitude. That was something that was done at a societal level, directed by Pharaoh. But certainly, while not everybody is necessarily guilty, everybody has some responsibility. And the way this plays out in today's world, is that when we see stuff that strikes us as wrong or unjust, the important thing is not to be one of those good people who does nothing. That we do have, this seems to be the message that we're being given here, is that, even if we're not directly responsible for a wrong, we still have some responsibility to at least speak up,
Well,
to at
that's
least
the
do
thing
something.
with racism, to be non-racist is not as good as being anti-racist. Non-racist means you're just not doing anything, but anti-racist, you're sort of taking a stand. I mean, this was, from another issue, but I mean, this is where I think it's coming into play here.
Right. And it does require care, because it's, not necessarily a popular point of view, but it is even easier to commit wrongs in the name of trying to do right.
Yeah.
And you have only to look at the world around you to see this, that there's a line that we're being asked to walk. That yes, we need to stand up against injustice, whether it's social injustice or racial injustice or some travesty of justice in the courts, that we need to be on alert for that. But also, it's very, very easy to commit wrongs in the name of doing something right. And we also have to be on alert for that as well. Not easy.
Yes. Okay, that's it.
That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stu.
Thank you, that was great.
You're a good teacher.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Why, thank you.
Thank you.
The best thing I heard you, well, I don't even think you said it directly. I think Ann said you said it.
If it was really good, I didn't say it.
No, it was good because, like when someone says to you, I don't believe in God, and you say, what kind of God don't you believe in?
I don't believe in that either, right?
No, but that
was
makes
an
you
error.
think.
Yeah,
That's
So
true.
anyway, I gotta go. Thank you.
Tell me what you don't believe, right? That's what you used to say.
right.
God, I wish I had tried that on myself. That'd be interesting.
What is it?
Oh, it's a good one. Okay, all this equipment. Okay, everybody, stay